Knowing he was taken care of, I released and my spirit left my body, and I went into the most spectacular place of being in this brilliant light, lightning strike white. It was the most profound freedom and joy and peace and exhilaration that I've ever experienced.
Lee Papa, welcome. It is a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you for having me, Lily.
So, can we jump right in? Can I hear all about your near death experience?
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, I'm going to take you back to 2008. And of course, everyone has a backstory, so I won't go into the depths of the backstory. I'm just going to take you into the day of the near-death experience. And I was married at the time, had a toddler son, and my elderly mother was living with us. And that day, I was ill, and I had an upper respiratory condition that at the time I was really seeking holistic remedies, but my husband was going off on a 10-day noble silence retreat. And that meant as soon as he went, we're in the US and living in Las Vegas. He was going off to Denver, Colorado, or Colorado. I don't think it was Denver, but Colorado, a drive of about 10 or 11 hours. So when he went into the retreat house, he was handing over his phone, no communication for 10 days. So he had asked me to go and get some antibiotics so he felt more comfortable and relaxed to be able to do that. Now, we were in a time of not really a great sweet spot of our relationship. We were really struggling. But I honored that and went and got some antibiotics and started taking them. We said our goodbyes on the phone. He went into the retreat house, and I was not taking care of myself. So I was taking the antibiotics, but was not resting or really taking any other approaches to feeling better. A few days later, a couple days later, I started to really go down, and then the day of the NDE, I had gotten to the point where my body, I could feel my spirit kind of drifting up, and that scared me because not that I was going, which was interesting, but I'm a Virgo and I like things organized. I like things taken care of. Anybody that's out there who's a Virgo, you kind of a little bit of a control issue of making sure that everything's okay. And my toddler son was in the house with my mom, elderly mother, who did not know what was going on. She was nowhere to be found. And it wasn't that it was that big of a house, it's just that she was sequestered in her room. And I was kind of trying to get communication out, but I was able to pick up the phone, my cell phone, call my girlfriend, who is my son's godmother, and said, I'm really ill. I need you to come get him. And she did. And with that, and that kind of safety net of knowing he was taken care of, I released and my spirit left my body, and I went into the most spectacular place. I'm going to kind of air quote place. It's a place, it's a non-place of being in this brilliant light, lightning strike white. And I didn't have a body. I was a sphere of energy, a sphere of light myself, but there were variations of light, and it was the most profound freedom and joy and peace and exhilaration that I've ever experienced. And I was like, woohoo! Very excited to have left the body. And I use the analogy of somebody that might like a roller coaster ride. And maybe they've traveled far to get to this particular roller coaster, and they've stood in line, and then they took the ride and all the twists and turns of the ride, and the creeping up, and then the ride down, and you can kind of feel the exhilaration, and some of it is scary and some of it is wonderful, and then you come around to the platform and you're like, whoa, exhausted but exhilarated and glad you did the ride, but not really wanting to do it again. That's the feeling that I had. I was alone at first and far off in the distance, which is an interesting thing to say because it having depth perception within this energy of light is kind of an odd thing, but off into the distance started coming towards me two light beings. They glowed light. One on the left was a little taller, a little more masculine in energy. The one on the right, a little smaller, a little more feminine in energy, but no features. So I couldn't really see anything, but they were light beings. And they came to me and they communicated telepathically to say it was my free will whether to stay and continue on to, let's just say, heaven, the other side, or to return back to my body and finish out this experience. And I was all about that. Nope, I'm ready to go. Now, they these beings had a job to do. It was very clear that they were chosen maybe for this job to do, to encourage me to go back. And so they said that although you have free will, there's information that you need to have before you made that decision. And so they gave me this thing that I call a relationship review. And although I had not really wasn't into near death experiences or understood them, even though I was a spiritual seeker, uh, I know now because the last couple of years I've kind of dug into other near death experiencers and they had these life reviews. So mine wasn't a life review, it was a relationship review and it was all visceral. So I didn't see it all happening. It washed over me, which is an interesting thing because I came back with very uh, empathic, visceral. It's more feeling is the amped up gift that I have. I kind of air quote the gift too because everybody has it. But anyway, I digress. Coming back to the near death experience, so I had a wash of everyone, I'll call them in my soul group, and I would feel the wisdom and the knowledge of the experience of having the exchange, having the relationship, and feeling the love for that person. And then it would dissipate, and then the next one would come. And I remember that I had one with my mother. My mother and I were very, very close. And so it's an interesting dynamic because when I talk about the backstory and then the post story, very much intertwined with my relationship with my mother. Then I remember distinctly my husband. And again, we were not in a place of deep love for each other. As a matter of fact, we probably were not in a place of like of each other when this occurred. We were really struggling. But in the near death experience, in the review experience, there was nothing but pure love and appreciation for this being that was my husband. The wisdom and the knowledge that came from the experience, and just the profound love. No woulda, coulda, shouldas, not, he's going to do this or he should have done that, or even judging myself about my part in the play. There was none of that. No judgment at all. And so then he washed away, and then my son was left the last, which really felt quite strategic on the part of these light beings. And Lily, the extraordinary love, it was softer, it was purer, it was gentler, it was really just so profound. The love that I have for this being that is my son, and the wisdom, the appreciation and gratitude that I had for birthing this child, for mothering this child, for having the experience, but no attachment. So profound love, but no attachment, which is key because we love with attachment here. And there was none of that. And so when that pureness of love washed away, came through and dissipated, and I was back into the presence of these light beings, I was in bliss and I was still ready to go. So anybody that has a child, is a parent, has a fur baby, the attachment that we have here on this experience. And let me tell you, lots of attachment in this third dimensional, I'll just call it, experience. I was a complete helicopter mom, my only child, lots of attachment. And I told you, Virgo, lots of control and attachment. Now, they said, okay, but there's one more piece that you need to know before you make this final decision, and that is that this being will not be able to fulfill his destiny if he loses his mom at such a young age. Apparently, he had lost his mom in previous lives at a young age, and so he would not be able to fulfill his destiny. And with that, I received a wash of a feeling of what he would feel at the loss of his mother. And for the longest time, like 6 months to a year after the near-death experience, I couldn't even tell this part of the story without bawling, because the feeling was like shards of glass ripping through your soul. The feeling of that pain, that grief was so intense that you wouldn't want that for anyone, much less a child and your own child. So with that, I was like, okay, I will go back. I will be this beautiful soul's mom until he doesn't need me anymore. And there was some negotiation there and about what it would look like and what my job would be when I came back. And with that agreement, I was back in my body, and I was almost completely better. And I sat up and I was like, what expletive just happened? And I was different, and everything was different. And I came back with kind of a residue left on me that made everything look vibrant and beautiful and extraordinary. Even inanimate objects held a beautiful vibrance and beauty. And I sat there, I don't know how long, in my bed trying to figure out what's going on and just being very present in this feeling that was extraordinary. I was calling it a fantasy of death at the time because I didn't know what it was. And with some assistance I received that day, I started understanding what had happened.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And so you said that things seemed like inanimate objects had this beauty that you couldn't explain, and there was this residue left from your experience. How long did that residue last?
Uh, Interesting, 2 weeks, almost to the day, and it slowly subsided. So one of the people that actually the gal that told me that it was a near-death experience was a spiritual advisor out of Houston, Texas, that a friend of mine referred me to. And I had reached out to her, and she called me almost immediately. And she asked me certain questions, and I told her what happened, and she's like, textbook near-death experience. She had had multiple ones. And she said, this residue, and she's the one that gave me the name for it, this residue will last about 2 weeks. She said, so journal it because you will spend the rest of your life trying to get back there. And she was 100% right. So it slowly started to dissipate and dissolve over that period of 2 weeks. And although I can remember it, I can't clearly live it again, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It does make sense. Could you explain what that felt like? What the residue felt like to see an inanimate object like a table and be so enamored with it?
Feels like you're a little crazy. I sat in my bed looking at my door, literally looking at the hinges and the doorknob. And I lived in a tract home. I mean, it wasn't like, I was living in some extraordinary place that had beautiful hardware, um, with such appreciation that everything just held a vibration of life, of vibrancy, and and beauty. And it was very much in the moment of it, of this feeling. And then I recall also, um, I had a little office downtown, and so I remember walking down a pathway, down the street, and I'm not even sure if this was during that 2 weeks or if this was kind of just like a flashback of it. It's just coming to me now, and I remember walking down the street. Oh, I think it was like a flashback of it, and everything just started. It popped, and everything just started to glow, like this had a like an aura around it, and I was like, whoa, this is just like, is this what life really looks like? And I love the what ifs, right? I love asking questions like that because it stretches us. So what if life was really meant to look like that? That everything was just vibrant and filled with life and beauty and love. And through whatever we did in this world to kind of put this static that made everything just look dim.
Mm.
And I think that's what where we are right now in our world is that we're breaking free from that static and that dimness to break through to get to that place of living in a world that looks vibrant and filled with life.
What did your relationship with life look like before your near death experience and after? Because
Mm.
you're talking about this dimness that we see in this world, and then after you had this residue of just complete awe of life, and everything was alive and beautiful. So, yeah, what did your relationship with life look like before and after?
That's such a great question, Lily. So before, I was, like most humans, broken in many ways, looked outside myself for everything. I looked outside myself for happiness, for fulfillment, for filling the void that was within me. I also blamed the external for everything that happened to me, and so it was exhausting to navigate in that space. I was always sick. I would say I was always sick, so I was always sick. And I meant, like little things that just always had a cold or something seemed like I was always dealing with something. Relationships were struggling, uh, and it wasn't that all relationships were a struggle, but key ones, my relationship with my partner, with my husband. Um, and so how it looked after wasn't like a flip of a switch. It happened slowly as I began to get the lessons that were given to me. So a lot of near death experiencers come back with gifts, right? I call them more heightened senses because I believe that we all have these can't speak today, senses that are just switched on. So once we touch the other side, there seems to be just a switch that goes in, and it's not all the same. So some are more clairaudient or clairvoyant or have mediumship abilities or more empathic, um, and are drawn to helping humanity for sure. My hands are just vibrating like crazy. Some do healing work. And so slowly, 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 there was the powerful impact of the near death experience and then the aftermath. And then as that slowly dissipated, it went really into a fast track of training and learning. And that happened in my dreams. That happened also within the physical world. And the confirmations and the synchronicities would give me confirmation, and it opened up an intuitive channel where I received information, and the more that I received it and got confirmation, the more that I received. And then I started moving into the healing arts. I opened up a wellness center. Never in a million years thought that I would be doing this kind of work, never ever. And it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Became a Reiki master, taught Reiki, In this center, it grew from 2 rooms to 6,000 square feet. We had an extraordinary team. We had amazing practitioners here in Las Vegas. And then I just really, every single day, learned to connect with spirit and the light team, and figured out my language of what it looked like to be on this planet in physical form at this time in history, which is an extraordinary time in our human evolution, and what I'm doing here. My son is now an adult, and just loved him into and kept him safe so that he could become his full expression of self. And so I hope that answered it. I kind of went on a tangent, but yeah, so my life is very different. I'm certainly not the same person. And each stage of it were new truths. So in other words, I value and honor each stage of those truths, and hope that it will continue to evolve. And that's why I like the what ifs, because I like the conversation that stretches, that allows new understanding and new wisdom that I'm ready for now, that will evolve me into the next state of my expansion. Whereas I wasn't ready to be who I am now 10 years ago. I needed to move through these other truths and levels, if you will, to be able to get to where I am now.
You explained that beautifully, and everything that you're saying resonates so deeply with me, because I feel, even though I haven't had a near-death experience, I feel that I am being divinely guided and shown these truths one by one and led to expand, to my expansion. And I'm honoring exactly what you said. I'm honoring the truths that I have been led to earlier. And yeah, it's just beautiful the way you described it. And whenever you're talking, life feels beautiful. Life feels like this amazing school where we can learn from and grow and take everything that we get, even the bad, and transmute that into something beautiful and use it for our own spiritual evolution. And that brings me back to what you said about Earth and the time of life that we are in right now on Earth. Could you expand more on that? What's your perspective?
Well, my feeling, and I'm in constant communion, right? I'm in a stage now in my life where I feel like my life is a constant prayer, a constant communion with spirit, and I feel viscerally that, and I had been given the message years ago through prophetic dreams that were not pretty. They were kind of scary. And through spirit communication, I had been given previously information. Now it is just such a strong feeling that we, and some of this kind of is, some people may not resonate with it, and that's okay. Take what resonates and leave the rest, right? Don't judge it, don't resist it, just take what resonates. But the understanding that I have been given, and I'm a very grounded person. I mean, I do corporate mindfulness training. I do coaching and training for professionals, and so I go from a place of mindfulness training, which is non-judgment and stress relief and meditation and things like that. So that's really my foundation. But this spirit communication has shown me that we have multiple timelines, many, many, many timelines. That aspects of us, and if you dig into quantum physics, which I haven't, if you do a deep dive into a lot of multiverse theory and things like that, which I haven't, I believe it confirms this, that we let's say our soul was here in the center, and then we have offshoots, almost like a starburst, of all these possible lives that are, from each decision that you make, is experiencing a different version of your life. This is what I think also deja vu has something to do with. And years ago, I was having a conversation with someone, and then all of a sudden this vision and this information came and gave me the drawing and said, we are collapsing these timelines into the one timeline. And I believe that it came down to two potential outcomes. And one is a darker one, and one is the one that is heaven on earth, let's just say Eden, right? Where we don't need the contrast. Ooh, I just got to chill. Where we don't need the contrast any longer for us to learn anything. And what I mean by the contrast, everything that is our lessons, you said it prior, you said bad things happen. I moved away from saying good and bad things. I use an umbrella of contrast. Anything that is not resonating with you, that lights you up, right? Or that you feel is the good thing, is just contrast. You can label it a million things. But I'm just going to call it contrast because it kind of diffuses the energy around it, just kind of makes it neutral, right? But a world where we no longer need the contrast to learn anything. Whew, wouldn't that be amazing? So that's what I feel is happening. I believe we have we have collapsed into two potential timelines. One that is dark and one is chaotic, and not one that you and I want to live in. And one that is the world that is full of life and love and no contrast. How long that will take, I have no idea. But you can feel it if you are sensitive at all. You can feel that something's moving quickly, that the world is changing and it is evolving in a faster pace over this last year especially. It's like faster and faster and faster. And astrologically, we are moving into the age of Aquarius. I think officially we have, but it's just the beginning stages of. And the age of Aquarius is about making known the unknown, deep dark secrets coming out into the world. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing all of this darkness coming to light. Things that had been hidden, had been going on for a long, long time. Things that have been hidden are now coming to light, right? We'll talk about child sex trafficking, right? That is now coming to light. Did I even know that was going on in my lifetime? I didn't know years ago. But it slowly started coming to light, and now more and more and more until it can get cleaned up. Now, there are lots of dark things in the world that need to come to light. And that's part of this evolutionary process that we are living. And I believe that we've all chosen to come here at this time for the big show. So you're here for the big show. And I think extraordinary things are going to happen in our lifetime. And those who have transitioned, some people call that death, there is no death. And I can tell you that 100% from this near-death experience, there is no death. These are the three takeaways. There's no death, there's only life, there's only love, and there's no attachment. So just love yourself and others with such robust energy of love that the attachment dissolves.
Beautiful. I love everything that you just said, and I do resonate deeply about that we are moving from a time of polarity into 5D, as people call it, fifth dimension. And so I want to bring it back to, you said in your NDE that you were given a choice. You have free will, so you could choose to go to the afterlife, or you could come back to Earth. Do you think everyone, whenever they die, has that choice?
It's such a great question, and I've pondered this with my girlfriend, um, and we've had conversations around it. And she made a comment that was kind of just a simple little comment, but it was so profound that we both went when she said it. And she said, "What if every death is an NDE that they just chose to go on?" And I'm like, oh. Right? It seems so simple. Um, Now there's just one little thing about that. I don't have an answer one way or another, so I can't tell you for sure. I don't know. I can just kind of play the what if game. I had a medium when I had my wellness center. We had amazing practitioners there, and we would vet the practitioners ahead of time. And I had this medium do a session with me, and she brought in, and I said nothing to her. I didn't know her from Adam. And she brought in an ex-boss of mine who I was extremely close to, who had transitioned, and transitioned early. He had transitioned due to complications of AIDS. And she knew details about this relationship. He had given me a dog. He had, there was an exchange about this. I had been ill. She gave me all these details. And she also said that it wasn't his time. Now, this was many years ago when this happened. So when I had this exchange with my girlfriend and I started reflecting back on what ifs, I thought, well, but in that experience, he said it wasn't his time. So he had made an error in judgment that led to the consequences. And so I guess I have to say, based on that information, that sometimes we go when it isn't our time. Just, it's shortened based on decisions that we make. I'd like to believe the other, that we all have the option and we can choose. And I do believe at some level we can choose when we leave. And I've had experiences in that as well, where someone has said, and I've had friends say this, oh yeah, my mom said that she was going to go next week and she did. So I think depending on your level of development as well, if you've learned everything that you've needed to learn in this lifetime and you want to go, I think you have a bit of control of that. And I don't mean doing yourself in. I mean literally just saying your body can go. I believe Edgar Cayce. I don't know if you're familiar with Edgar Cayce, but if you're not, you should check him out. He was called the Sleeping Psychic, I believe was his name. And I believe his timeline was around the 1920s. And he was a phenomenal psychic, and he predicted his own death. And I don't know whether he had choice of it or he just predicted it ahead of time. But it's a very interesting, what could be more interesting than to talk about life and death? Love these conversations. Yeah, it's hard for me to have other types of conversations at this stage of my development in life. It's hard for me to have conversations around just the day-to-day mundane things that happen in the world. But this kind of conversation, I'm all there.
Absolutely. Same. I love these type of conversations because it stimulates my brain. I'm able to think past like the everyday type of things and question why we're here, and that makes me live life better. Having these types of conversations helps me live life to the fullest I can possibly live and be more connected to myself and be more connected to God within me. And I think these conversations are helping others to do that as well, and that's the beauty of having these conversations online. Other people can listen
Totally.
in.
That's right.
So your relationship with your son, you came back because of how he would feel whenever you were gone, and that he wouldn't be able to live to follow through with his life's purpose if you would pass. And that in previous lives his mother had passed away while he was young. So how did your perspective of your son change after your near-death experience?
Oh, another great question. I've never been asked that, and I love that question. It changed considerably. Uh, Not that I loved him anymore, because it really wasn't possible. I loved him at a different level, a different understanding, and less controlling. So I moved through all of that, because that's all just fear. Control is fear. So I healed all that out of me, and our relationship, just like any relationship from a parent and a child, is going to go through stages. And he used to say to me, because again I went into this work and he was around it, and he would hear me talk about mindfulness training and things like that, and I would say things to him, and he would say, "Oh, Mom, that's your thing, that's not mine." And then he would say, I don't even know if I believe in God. And I would say, that's okay. Just because you don't believe doesn't mean that it's not true. God will reveal to you when you're ready. And was also a lesson for me, to allow him to just go through the process. And I also had help when, I had my non-physical help to say, just love him and keep him safe and be a good example best that you can, and he'll be fine. And actually the guidance that I got was, I really only needed to wait until he was 12, until he got everything that he needed to be able to move on. But then, I'm living in this experience, and I'm like, I don't want to go now. I have things to do. I want to hang out with him. I want to see how he turns out. I want to be a grandma. I want to, not too soon, but I want to have those experiences within this experience. So it does have a hold on you.
Okay, you brought so many questions to my mind. Okay, first, could you touch on detachment? Because that seems like a theme with you, like a core lesson that you learned and that you continue to learn after your near-death experience, about being detached, this objective view that I hear lots of near-death experiencers talk about, that they have whenever they're in the afterlife. It's just this objective peace, calm towards everything. And you also said that control is just coming from a place of fear. So have at it. Go about detachment.
Well, I've learned lots of lessons around it. Attachment to, there's many different types of attachment. And we're that proverbial onion where we keep peeling away these layers of healing that needs to be done. And you think you've learned the one lesson around attachment or fear or whatever, and then you're like, oh, okay, I learned that lesson, and then all of a sudden it creeps in a different area of your life, and you're, oh, I have to figure that out over here. And I believe the way that it is on the other side is that the love, which we don't have clear understanding of, this level of love we can't even possibly conceive of. It is so vast and so beyond the experience of love that we have here. But because it goes up so phenomenally high, this expansive feeling of, the only word we know is love, that the attachment part of our experience goes down. So my lessons that they gave me, creator, God, source, the divine, spirit, non-physicals, spirit guides, angels, whoever they are, gave me the lessons where I needed the lessons. So I'll give you one of them that came. And I go into detail of that in the book, but I was very attached to my stuff because remember, I sought happiness and everything outside myself. So retail therapy, right? I was very attached to my things. And I was going, or my husband at the time and our baby were going to France, the south of France, to see his parents for the summer holiday. And I packed all my nicest things, right? They were more formal in the way that they approached life. You know, they dressed for dinner, that kind of thing. So I wanted to impress my in-laws, right? So I brought all my nice things and my jewelry and anything that, you know, would kind of that I had attachment to. And we had our trip. On the way back, there was heightened security at the airports. There were some things going on that at that time brought on heightened security. So you had to really limit what you were carrying on. And we had the baby, so I just packed our carry-on, just had things that were related to him, and I packed all my jewelry, all my nice things in my luggage. And at that time, I was still, you know, navigating spirituality, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to put some light around it. It's going to be fine, you know. But it wasn't fine because all the luggage came through New York and into Las Vegas, but mine. Both my pieces of luggage were gone, never to be found again, and my husband's stuff came. I mourned my stuff, Lily, like embarrassingly so. Like I was so attached to the memories, attached to the trips that I took, attached to the people that gave those things to me, attached to how I shopped for the bargain to get that thing, and it was ridiculous. And I cried. It was sad. It was sad that I was so attached. But I needed to feel the pain of that to finally get the aha of, oh, the lessons attachment. And that was just one of a gazillion lessons that I've received that, and I'm grateful for. And then, you know, wasn't able to rebuy those things or whatever, which the lesson was fine. I mean, I'm not attached to things at all now. But I couldn't just kind of flip the switch and say, oh, I'm not going to be attached to things anymore. You have to go through the lesson, and the lesson, that contrast, can be very painful to get to the lesson. But on the other side, when you are, when the reveal is there of the lesson, and you can feel the level of expansion through the lesson, it is so worth it. You don't feel like it when you're in the middle of the tornado, right? You're feeling sorry for yourself, you're feeling like a victim or whatever it is in that particular circumstance. But oh, how sweet the lessons are.
This is so good. This is so, so good because you're talking about pain and the polarity, and it can happen in the simplest ways. Like, for example, with your luggage. That could seem like such a simple thing to someone, but you still got the same lesson that you would have got if it was a bigger thing. And right now we're living in this time of polarity. So what would you say is the purpose of the pain in life? What does pain do for us?
I believe that this experience on this plane is full of contrast so that we can learn, period. Because I'll use, when I'm teaching, especially when I had the center and I was teaching Reiki, I would use a parable of heaven. And, you know, I always air quote these things because I'm like, you can plug in whatever name you want. But so we've lived our lives and now we're in heaven, right? And it's 24/7 bliss. And no contrast at all. We get to read what we want. We get to learn what we want. We spend our times in nurturing, loving environments, and it's great. But it's kind of like that $1,000,000 view. And I love the ocean. So for me, that view would be the view of the ocean. And maybe it's a inflation, multi-$1,000,000 view. And you get it, and you drink your coffee out on the deck, and you just smell the air, and you are just, you love this view. But then what happens over time is it kind of loses its value because you have seen it every day and you're out there every day. And so it doesn't feel the same. And so then you might need another view or another house or something else to, bring you back up to that level. So heaven is sort of kind of like that, where it's 24/7 bliss, but then it's kind of just lost its spark a little bit because it's 24/7 bliss. So what do? Oh, I'm going to go and get some contrast. I'm going to go learn something. So you speak to your mentor, telepathically say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about going back to Earth. And I haven't quite explored everything I want to explore. So let's look at my chart. Let's look at my file. See, what haven't I really explored? Oh, I haven't really explored forgiveness. Yeah, let's go. I'm going to do forgiveness this time. And I think I'm going to do forgiveness in a different way. Maybe abuse, right? Plug in whatever type of abuse you want to explore. And so you send out a telepathic message to your team, your spirit family, right? And anybody who hasn't already reincarnated, meet me on cloud 9 and we're going to talk about going back. Okay, so we're now on cloud 9 with a long conference room table, and all these souls who you've had other lifetimes with show up. And you're like, oh, okay, so I'm going to live in a middle-class family, and I need a mom, I need a dad. I'm going to have siblings this time. Who wants to be my sister, my brother? Who's going to come in and be my dog later on? Oh, okay, who's going to do that? And then I need some mentors along the way to make sure that like I'm on path. Okay, you're going to show up when I'm 20. You're going to show up when I'm 30. You're going to show up. I'm going to have a spouse. I'm going to do this. Okay, everybody. Okay, and so like the biggest thing is this trigger, this biggest lesson of forgiveness is going to be maybe I get abused by an uncle, let's just say. I need somebody to play that role for me. Way down at the end of the conference room table, you see the soul that you have had so many lifetimes with. Oh, you two are you are the best buds, right? And that soul said, I'll be that role for you. The most loving thing that soul could do for you is to play that awful part in the physical form so that you get to learn the lesson of forgiveness. And so it's a very long story, long parable, but to say that when we look at our lives in contrast from a place of observer, and we look at the largest lesson, the theme of the lesson in your life, if you could just for a glimmer think that soul has given you the gift of the lesson. It's hard to do. Believe me, it's hard to do. But that is the purpose of our life here in 3D, is to have the contrast so that we learn. Now, I know that we're probably running over time, but in the book, there is a section that is a channel that I received that wraps up what we're doing here on Earth. And if you let me, I'd love to read it to you. It's not that long,
Please.
about a page and a half. So this came through me by a very high vibrational being named Joseph. And he says, love enters us from a well of existence that is streaming from the natural source. We do not own it. It flows freely and is given with no requirement or judgment of its use. It is the life force of all creation. I am here to tell you that this life force runs through each and every one of you and each and every one of all living beings in the cosmos. If you could glimpse for just one moment the purity of the light of all existence, the same moment that we allowed Lee to experience and to draw upon for her strength in her journey as she continues to expand into the being that she already is, it would most definitely change you. The worry and the fear that penetrates every layer of your current existence would vanish like a streak of lightning in the night sky. It would melt all the worry and darkness from your hearts and fill you with the light of love for all mankind. There would be no differences, no wars to fight, no burdens of finance, as with this love, all things for all people are possible. Your limited knowing of what the light is the only problem or issue that you need to resolve. The only issue. As once the clarity is yours, you will no longer seek anything but the essence that is the light of pure energy. You see, the strength that is the you, that you do not know, is just below the surface to be uncovered by you. This is the journey, you see. It is the unveiling of the shell that you have encrusted upon yourself in darkness so that you can see again. The world is your playground, your playhouse, your school. It is that for each and every one of you. Some of you see now and some of you are beginning to see. It is a joyous occasion for all of those who are able to see this unfold. It is glorious in many ways as your existence is unfolding in the hands of those who seek. You are the beauty and the life of all beings and all people, and the sages of the old ways will no longer be the ones that those follow, as the followers will be only you in your own path of seeking. This is true for all. Do not seek to find what is already within you. The path to the enlightened is with you.
That's amazing. And what is your book called?
The Temple of All Knowing.
The Temple of All
And
Knowing.
I would say this is the second edition, 10th anniversary. I highly recommend you get the second edition. Don't go to the first one. There's so much more in the first one, and it's certainly better written after 10 years of writing experience. But yes, thank you.
And where can people find more about you?
Well, you're going to put links, I hope, in the description box. So, my website, leepapa.com, but definitely would shoot people to the YouTube channel, which is at Live Mindful Lee. That's 2 L's in the middle. And I have a YouTube channel and a new podcast called Sunday Communion that is with friends, and we talk about spiritual subjects as well. And there's some mindfulness information on the YouTube channel as well.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time today, Lee, and your story, and letting me ask you all of my questions. It has been so fun.
It has been a joy, and I have to tell you, Lily, just a little thing. The name Lily is very important to me, and that is that I actually was pregnant with a second child, and Spirit gave me the name that she was going to be Lily. Now, she never came through. She decided to not come through into this experience, but the name is always very, whenever I see the name and whoever I meet with the name Lily is very dear to me. So I really appreciate you having me on your show.
I appreciate you being here.